Hi, and this is the Lean Into Art podcast, where a couple of visual storytellers get together and talk about the topics that enthrall us related to making comics, making video games, and just the lifestyle around it. Where it's like this might be your main gig, it might be your side gig. Either way, it's an interesting set of work that we can learn a lot by making stuff and then thinking about it and talking about what we made and all that. Hi, I am Rob Stenzinger, one of your co-hosts, and I'm a user experience designer, and I also make video games. And with me is co-host.
Hi, I'm Jerzy Drozd. I am a cartoonist and teaching artist, which is to say a person who makes graphic novels and then teaches people how to make graphic novels. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing pretty well. You sound a lot different this week.
I'm calling in from my bunker, apparently, when you look behind me. Yeah, and I'm without my audio equipment. I'm actually talking to you over my Logitech webcam. Sorry, apologies to everybody who is really enjoys the audio quality of the show. This one's going to have a little bit of a dip in it because all of my equipment is in two places right now because I'm in the process of moving.
Totally understandable, but yeah, it's been a while. Sometimes we've had audio issues in the past. I think our audience has been overall pretty understanding, as long as it isn't the extreme situation of forgot to attach the file like I did, different things in the past. But yeah, it's part of the adventures of we already shared on the recent episode how you and Ann are moving. And that's, side projects continue during life, potentially. Or,
yes.
I think it's great you made time to be able to do a recording tonight. So thanks.
Well, no, this is a fun thing to do. And yes, side projects continue, hopefully, presumably. But for those who haven't heard, yes, Ann and I are... And the reason I'm saying this is because I'm still getting notifications in my feeds from people saying what's this? You're moving? Yes, Ann and I are moving to Columbus, Ohio, which is 3 hours south of Ann Arbor, because Ann accepted a position at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum, which is a marvelous, marvelous place. It is a museum of original comics art. It's a dream job, but people ask me, well, what does this mean for A2CAF? Ann and I are staying on as co-organizers of the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, because after all, it's only 3 hours south. So we will be there in June. Father's Day weekend. So we'll see you there if you decide to come. But we're going to stay on that project as long as we can, because it's a project that's very near and dear to our hearts. And then what am I going to do? Am I going to continue teaching? I don't know yet. I'm moving to Columbus, and I'm going to invest in some of my comics projects for a while, and then maybe look into picking up some teaching work down there. I'm sure there's going to be places for me to go. And I still have a pretty full schedule of school visits and one-off workshops at libraries around the Midwest. So I'm not too worried that I'm going to stop teaching anytime soon, but it's definitely a time of transition. And anybody who's moved house, it's an intense time of transition, but this will feel like a relaxing break to think about creativity and talk about art and talk about communicating visually rather than lifting big heavy things and putting them over there. No, not there, put them there. Okay, let's move them over here. Let's try this.
Good. Well, good. This is a break. That's I'm glad. And I do recall it was 3 years ago. Kate and I moved, not as far as you and Ann, but still. Yeah, a house of stuff is a significant thing to manage and all that. But, here we are, right? We have a topic, and it turns out it's not moving, but that could be interesting too, right? Dealing with all the, I think we've had some related enough, episodes before, but keeping things going while you're moving or not. And juggling or pausing or whatever. Juggling as a metaphor where it's even if you're juggling, that's two balls, you're never, or three, you're never holding all three at once, right? Except for when you start. So there's always something, you chuck it in the air and that can give you time to, anyway, there you go. There's a mini episode on moving. But no, we're here to talk about something that you do that I've always admired from afar and have wrestled with thinking of maybe trying and stuff. So I'm looking forward to talking with you about these public art drops.
Public art drops,
Yeah.
yeah. Which I first heard of by way of Jake Parker, who, many people know who he is, but you can find him on YouTube. He does a whole lot of art videos and lectures and essays on making art. But he does this thing where I was watching him on Instagram do this thing where he takes these he does these original drawings, puts them in a nice little sleeve, and then hides them in different towns when he's traveling for his work, and then he lets his constituency know about it. It's hidden in this town. Try to find it. So something about that delighted me when I first saw it, and we can talk more about like why it delights me, and we can talk more about what it looks like when we dive into the show. Are you ready to dive into the show, Rob?
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about these art drops.
All right, here we go. He's got the guitar out already.
Spicing it up. I was like, are you going to? I really think every week, is he going to play it again?
Ann and I were thinking about you this past weekend when we were moving because we were working with movers and everything, but we're still driving quite a ways, 3 hours to then pack all the stuff into the truck, drive 3 hours, unpack all the stuff out of the truck. And Ann said to me, he's like, I don't want to be a Dragon Ball character anymore. I don't want to operate at that kind of level of intensity anymore. I'm like, yeah. You can only do it for so long. You can only be Super Saiyan for so long, right? You got to shut it off.
Absolutely. That's that's a lot. And so let's say you okay. I want to cover the topic in the angle and in the progression that you've got laid out. So as far as talking about, because I'm really curious, I think this is more of like a next section kind of thing. But I've like art drops, right? It's kind of what you said makes me think of the like a scarcity feeling of like I've got enough to do making the art related to my current workload and projects, and then to tack on this other thing of like, well, and then there's this other portion of it that I just sort of go, here you go, take it.
Right, so right. It's like I'm taking my work home, right? One could make the argument that like, geez, I'm drawing this many hours a day. I don't have it in me, and that's I get that, totally legit. But there's something. I mean, I think it should go without saying, but maybe some people are new to the show. We both have a strong sense of advocacy in each of us. Like we both want to not only make stuff, but we want to make other people feel as excited about making stuff as we feel about it, right? Or at the very least, we want to be examples of people who are very excited about making stuff, right? So there's like a sense of advocacy in us that's like, I think, if not innate, it's very interwoven into a lot of our motivations. So yes, I'm drawing in my off hours, but as I say, when I'm doing some of my art drops, and we can talk about the different types in a second, for me, it's like, this is an opportunity for me to draw purely for fun. This is pure expression. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to please a client. This is me saying, what would delight me today? Or it could be like a variety of other things, like other kinds of experiments. But another artist, and is an Ann Arbor artist that I wanted to point out, who I think is another person who kind of helped inspire me along this idea of like leaving art in public spaces, is David Zinn. If you haven't heard of this guy, he's very well known in Ann Arbor, but I don't know how well known he is outside. I imagine he is. And he does these chalk drawings all over town, and unbidden. What was the word I'm looking for? He is not prompted by anybody else to do it. He just looks for interesting little locations on sidewalks, and he does these perspective drawings of these creatures, these recurring characters of his. And let's see if I can get this video to load. Maybe not. No, I'm not gonna get that video to load. But if you go to zinart.com, if you're just listening to the audio, you can see what I'm talking about. Like you can see that like they're drawings of the characters in the perspective if you were looking down at the sidewalk, right? And so at any given point, while you're walking around downtown Ann Arbor, you might find one of these cute little drawings someplace. And I've had conversations with David about this, and he feels very strongly about this idea of ephemeral, public, unsanctioned art that just appears, and like these chalk drawings, they go away after a little while, right? It's not like tagging with like spray paint. This is like it's a little chalk drawing that will eventually get washed away. And like the idea of the world being a canvas of sorts, right? So having talked to him and seeing Jake doing those kinds of art drops, it got me thinking like, well, how would I approach this kind of thing, and what would be fun for me to do? And so one of the ones that I do on a regular basis, and actually Troy Shadowing in the chat was already talking about this, Ann Arbor's bowling alley's loss will soon be some Ohio bowling alley's gain, is I do every Monday I bowl with my bowling league. I've been doing this for like 4 years now, 5 years, I don't remember how long. And so I'm sitting at a bowling alley waiting for my turn, right? And maybe I don't play every game because there's like, 4 or 5 of us on the team, and you only need 3 for a game. So, there's some times where I'm sitting out. And so, if I'm just sitting there and I'm just chatting, in a friendly way with teammates, I could be drawing too. Why not? And so, I turned these doodles into actual like little, it used to be pen and ink drawings that were colored with crayon, but I recently started doing watercolors. And then I go hide them someplace in the bowling alley, and usually in a place where I think kids might find them, because my art is meant for young people, right? So here we have on my Instagram feed, Bowling Night Art Drop number 3 for the 2019 Super Sweet Bowling season. We can link to it in the show notes. But and this one just came as a prompt from a friend of mine who was like really into Ben-Hur, and was saying like, oh, what if you did like a Ben-Hur Baron von Bear drawing? I was like, all right, let's see what that looks like, But so in this case, what I'm doing is I'm actually doing the drawing in the place and then hiding it afterwards. And I'm not drawing it ahead of time and then hiding it, right? And again, part of it is like just joyously interacting with my craft. Part of it is advocacy, because like people will walk by and like, what's this guy doing, right? As a matter of fact, some of the bowling alley staff have found my drawings over the years, and there's a bulletin board up by the registration area where the ones that they found have been pinned up. And when I registered this year, one of the guys, when he took my name, he was like, oh, you're the guy. Like, I'm what guy? He's like, you're the guy who did these. I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. So
no longer as mysterious. But that's so. Let's see. It seems like there's like a few different. I mean, for each artist you listed, including yourself, there's like a different, almost like a different angle on this. And so for you, it's like it's a almost capturing something about that evening, and then leaving it behind, with a couple of things. I mean, how do you? So what makes it obvious that it was purposefully left behind?
So I look for, when I'm hiding it, I look for an easy to spot area, right? So like a place that I use a lot at the bowling alley is there's a claw machine. One of those like things you put a quarter in and then the claw moves around like this, and you move it with the joystick and you try to grab a stuffed animal and often don't. And it's right up against a wall, and the wall is just like a dark brown. So if I slide the art drop and put it right against the wall, between the wall and the claw machine, you can see right through the glass there's a drawing of these cute animals doing something. So if you're playing the claw machine, you're gonna spot it. But it's deliberately placed. It's clear that it's not discarded, right? Because like that's something I'm also careful about. Is try to make it look like it was deliberately placed in the place that was hidden but meant to be discovered. So in plain sight, but not in obvious sight, not drawing attention to itself. So another one related to this idea of where do I look to hide stuff Here's a different kind of art drop I did this past August when I went to the PowerCon, the He-Man and She-Ra convention in Torrance, California, with my buddy Kevin Copa. And at night in the hotel, I would work on these watercolors of different He-Man characters. And then during the day at the convention, I wandered around the hotel looking for places to put these drawings. And you know, when you're in a pop culture convention, there is going to be detritus. There's going to be like programs that accidentally get dropped on the floor, or tickets to different things that accidentally get dropped down, like napkins, whatever. So I tried to find places that were near the floor, but were clearly not discarded. So this merman piece that I'm showing right now from my Instagram feed, I put in one of the big bay windows overlooking, or that looked out into an atrium at the hotel. But it was standing up, leaning against the glass, right? This was placed here, but it is low to the ground. It's not going to be in your immediate line of sight. Again, in plain sight, but hidden in the sense that it's not drawing attention to itself, right?
Okay. I can see that because it's, so did you come upon these rules by having discovered some puzzles or challenges, or did you think this through to that extent from the beginning?
I don't think I did. I think it was more like so my agenda was, I want somebody to trip across this by accident. I want to make a kid happy without being there to make them happy, right? I want to accidentally delight a child. That was sort of like my headline. Okay, how do you do that? Well, I know that as a kid, you know, like when you're a little kid and you find $5 on the ground, right?
Oh yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yep.
But again, $5 it has like very clear inherent value. It has, you know, what you can do with that. But a drawing that's left on the ground is like, oh, maybe that fell out of somebody's bag, maybe that belongs to somebody else. It becomes a little bit more ambiguous, right? So it seemed obvious to me that it had to be hidden but not discarded. So I couldn't, like, it can't lay on the ground, right? Like, that's the number one thing. It can't be if it's going to be in immediate line of sight, it should be in immediate line of sight while you're doing something else, right? I guess these are rules I sort of came up with in the process of looking for hiding spaces. And when I would go like, not there, you know, I would ask, okay,
it
well,
does seem crafted. I mean, it seems like you've put a bit of design into this. Like if you think of, well, you have a goal for this, which is to, you know, have this unexpected surprise waiting for probably a younger person, and yet not have it be misunderstood, right? And just having that those constraints in mind, it's like you've really done some like testing and exploring of that, and because I mean what you described, I mean seems like it's you know, it seems like you've set yourself up to not have like a well-intentioned person finding it and thinking like, oh my gosh, there's this really absent-minded illustrator, I have to help them, right?
Well, okay, so this is baked into my recipe as well, is I have no illusions that if I put art drop on my Instagram feed, that kids all over Ann Arbor going, where is it? Right? Like, I know that my level of celebrity, quote unquote, whatever you want to call that, however you want to measure it, is not commensurate with the idea of, well, if I just make an Instagram post, people will go hunting for it. So, with that in mind, and by the way, no value judgment there. That's just a statement of that's evaluating what the parameters and the limitations of what we're doing are. Mine is about incidental discovery rather than scavenger hunt. Now, different thing though with the He-Man one, because now I'm at a convention where there's a very focused intention and activity. The people have descended. People have paid money for tickets, flights, and hotels to be at this place celebrating He-Man. Therefore, I know that if I put some of these out and actually leave clues, right? Like here, in this case, if you look at the merman drawing, I'm showing where I put it, right? I'm giving you some kind of like extra data to say, here's an idea of where it is, go find it, and then I'm going to hashtag it with MOTU and He-Man, because I know that people are tracking that right now.
Well, and PowerCon, right?
That's right.
And so you've got a few different ways to well, you are instigating the scavenger hunt in this case.
In this case, I am, yes. But again, this is because I know that I'm at an event where the interest in that particular type of thing, if I'm drawing a drawing of Merman, people are probably going to be interested in that. Nobody's going to be, maybe, there's an outside chance somebody's going to say, oh, a Jerzy draws Merman, thank goodness. But odds are the primary motivator is, neat, a Merman drawing. And I remember at the convention, I would place the drawings, and about 15 minutes later I'd walk by and it would be gone. They were snatched up pretty darn quick. So that was very fun and satisfying, right? Nobody interacted with me about it. Nobody like followed up saying like, I found it or anything like that. I think it was probably more or less people were just like, oh wow, what's this, But it was fun. It was a fun thing to do.
This is this is interesting because I think you've provided some insight in how other folks could think of going about this. I still wrestle with that initial concern as far as like just capacity, right? To be like, and then this one, but it seems it's attractive in that it has this lack of preciousness, this playfulness, and the advocacy. I was like, gosh, as soon as you said advocacy, I'm like, gosh, dang it, you just, that's the angle that I could totally see getting into it.
I tongue-sorted you into it. Yeah, let's talk. We can talk. You want to talk about in the second half? You want to take a break, and then maybe we can talk about some of how this advocacy and what the motivations are behind it, and like what value I get out of it, and how I rationalize putting in that extra time to make these things, and where I find that time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would love to dig into that.
Okay.
But first, a break.
And let me find my tab. There it is. Okay, so in a minute and 30 seconds, we are going to talk about all those things that I just mentioned, all those motivations as to why leave art in public in the first place and how do you find the time for it. But before we do that, we have to thank some people who make this show possible, and those folks happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/leanintoart is the website. I'm going to say it a little bit more slowly because I know my audio quality is very poor today. patreon.com/leanintoart. You're listening to the Lean Into Art cast, right? It's easy enough to remember. But I want to thank those 5 people that I mentioned who have been supporting us for some time there. First up, India Swift. Thank you, India, for believing in us and what we do. You can find India on Twitter @OldSwifty. Also, Brandon Dayton, longtime friend of the show, been on the show many times. You can find Brandon @Brandon Dayton on Twitter. Ben Odgren, thank you, Ben. It means a lot to us. You can find Ben on Twitter @Ben Odgren. And Olivia Birdton. Olivia, you can find on Twitter @Olivia Birdton. Thank you, Olivia. And finally, Kim Holm. And you can find Kim Holm on Twitter @Denungaherholm. We will link to it in the show notes. Fabulous artist and longtime supporter of the show. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for believing in us. And if you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/leanintoart, where you'll find all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record only for people who support us on Patreon. And the latest extra lean actually has our first curse word, which we use to illustrate what I think is a very interesting point about language. So once again, it's patreon.com/leanintoart. Thank you, everybody who's been supporting us there. It means a lot to us.
It really does. Thank you. So here we are, about to head into the next section. Do we have some mood music?
How about something a little more intense?
It is.
Because there's a lot of feelings. A lot of feelings involved with drawing in public and leaving art out for people. Okay. And Carrie's in the chat says that extra lean was a good one. I'm so glad you think so. Because I feel like we were going out on a limb like that. And I think there was a part where you can hear me and Rob going like, oh, how do we feel about this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What's the point? Why do this? How do you find the capacity? if I may lead with a headline, going back to Jake Parker and David Zinn, and also I should mention Eric Scales. Eric Scales is another artist who does this, and I had a nice conversation with him recently. He's a Disney artist who does the art drops as well. And I was just like, thank you, Eric, for using your immense skill and talent to like make the world a slightly more magical place for people by just leaving art and fun, like interesting places for people to trip upon. When you see this art, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't you be charmed by finding one of his pieces just sitting around someplace, right? And you think about it, it's like you're sharing you're not just like creating like a fun little moment of like delightful discovery, but like you're sharing like a wealth of talent and expertise and hard-won skill with the world at large, right? And the lead line, like if I were to like summarize the whole idea for me personally, and as dumb as this is going to sound, it's like it's kind of trying to incidentally delight a stranger, right? I don't know how people are going to interact with my books. When I put a book out into the world like Science Comics Rockets, people are going to read it. Some people are going to like it. Some people are not going to like it. I'm probably not going to hear from many of them, right? So for the most part, I'm kind of putting work into the world to delight strangers. But there's something that I especially like about just leaving a little piece of art someplace, and I have almost zero chance of ever finding out what they thought of it, right? Which, again, takes the pressure off of me. It's like, it's the whole dance as if no one's watching kind of idea, right? You're drawing what makes you really happy, and then just leaving it someplace and hope that somebody enjoys it as much as you did.
Have you ever thought that, let's say, what if I don't know, let's say I didn't know who you were, parallel universe, and I'm like, oh, what a busy week. Wish I had time for this. Like, I think I'm going to go, I don't know, I'm going to go get a stuffed animal out of that bowling arcade thing to relieve some stress. And I go there and I'm like, I'm going to try to get this stuffed animal. Hey, wait a minute. What's that in the back of this cage? That's a mighty fine piece of art. What? What is this? Who's got the time to leave art like this? I don't know. I'm done with my role-playing scenario, but you get my point, right? I don't know. Probably it's far-fetched.
You're saying that because it is a highly skilled piece of illustration that it would make you angry?
Yeah, exactly. Look at this guy. Leaving behind this nice image. Should be on eBay.
Now you're just showing off.
Come on. Yeah.
This thing I just dashed out and put it and hidden it on a plain sight. I don't know. I mean, I would argue that, like I pull up that Baron von Bear piece that I did, which I think turned out okay. Mm-hmm. Come on, Rob. It's not like there's like a butt ton of detail on this thing. This thing was done quickly, and I took shortcuts to make it happen, right? Mm-hmm. It's a neat drawing.
It is a good drawing, and it's there is that expression of skill. So okay, throw out my argument was baloney. It was a playful argument, right? The this image does have a lot of like you said earlier, in a way, you're sharing advocacy and expressing your skill is conveyed in this thing, and that alone, discovering it, can be a gateway to possibility of like, oh, this stuff doesn't have to just exist in books or on images or whatever. I have an original piece of art in my hand. It's not this alien artifact, whatever. This is fascinating to me. What happens? How does someone go further with that then? Like, I feel great. This was awesome. Now what?
Who? Me, the artist, or they, the person who found it?
Well, no, the person who found it. Like, this is because let's say I'm inspired for the illustration in general. Does this represent a story? I want this story. Or let's see. So it could be subject matter, it could be story, it could be just technique. Holy moly. This is watercolor, isn't it? Oh my gosh, I want to do this, right? Pick any of those things. This drawing could easily transmit this kind of signal of delight and curiosity, right? But then
absolutely. And any one of those is like up in the cards, right? So, for instance, when I was painting this last one that I just had up on the screen, the Ben-Hur one, a fellow bowler who is also an artist walked by the table, saw me working, and leaned in and said, like, "Hey, wait a minute, what are you working with there?" And I have like this little travel kit. I think we talked about this on a past Lean Into Art cast. I carry this little watercolor tin that my wife got me for the holidays a few years ago, and it's really dinky, but it has all the colors I need in order to do a quick little watercolor painting. And then I just have some water brushes, those like plastic brushes that you can fill water in the
Quick question:
chamber.
that tin,
Yeah.
how big is that
Yeah.
tin? Is that about the size of what, like a little bigger than a? Oh, it looks like maybe two Altoids cans. Is that roughly?
Roughly. You want to know what? It's actually about the size of the very first iPod. It'll give you some perspective if you're an oldster.
Okay, sure.
But I would say like a deck of cards.
deck of
What
cards,
is
okay.
maybe like 4 inches tall by about like 2.5 inches wide. And it's got
Gotcha,
this
okay.
cute little
'Cause
ring on
it's-
the back so you can put your hand in it and it searches.
That's a good ergonomic touch.
These two little drawers act as your mixing palettes, and then there's your your colors, and then you can got like a itty bitty pencil, itty bitty mechanical pencil with blue lead, and then an itty bitty brush. But then I also carry water brushes with me. But before that, I just did it with Crayola crayons and brush pens.
So someone saw you doing this work.
Yeah, and he came over and he asked, like, well, what are you using there? And I showed him my my palette and the water brush. Is like, oh my gosh, that's so mobile. It travels everywhere. I'm like, well, yeah, a lot of people do this. And he's like, I hadn't seen this before. So there's that. There's like the potentially getting somebody else interested in doing the same thing. There's also like the discovery factor of this is a very, very low. If we had a Maslow's hierarchy of Jersey's needs in doing this thing, one of the lowest rungs would be like just inspiring new readers. So like I do put my Instagram on the back of the drawings in case anybody wants to follow up on it. But then yeah, there's also like the fact that this maybe has more to do with my biography than anything else. The more I think about it, I bet this is the case. I grew up in a very rural area. Like so rural that and in the 80s, so this is pre-internet, my first grade classroom was in a 2-room schoolhouse. I'm not trying to sound like I walked uphill both ways, but I'm just saying it was small. There were 20 kids in my entire grade, 250 kids in the entire school, like K through 12, right? Not a lot of access to stuff, and so authors and artists and celebrities and anybody who like created entertainment seemed like extremely distant things that just they don't come from this place, right? People like that don't come from here, right? That's not said in so many words, but there's a sense of it. And so part of it for me is also to say like, hey, there are creative people in your midst. There are creative people all around you, and one of them was just here recently. As a child, that would have had a profound impact on me. So there's that too. It's not just, actually it has very little to do with wowing people with my skill set, although I want to do a good job, but it has more to do with, sending the signal to the world that there are people who think creatively around you. They are leaving a trail, right? They're leaving you original one-of-a-kind pieces that are just for you because you were lucky enough to find it. There's this idea of like in the Peter S. Beagle's The Last Unicorn, the butterfly, when it's talking to the unicorn and describing what a unicorn is to the unicorn, he says they're visible only to people who search and trust, right? I think there's something really charming about that idea of like the magical creatures only reveal themselves if you search and trust. So like there's that aspect to it too, right?
Yeah, that is. It is I mean, it's in itself. It's a random act of kindness, just trying to share some beauty, and that let's see. And I get that maybe there's a. I don't think there's any shame in that like gosh darn it, there is skill. There's a lot of skill in any darn kind of thing that you would put in public like that. And that is a credibility sign. That is a signal, and it intermingles with the generous act, right? And I'm not trying to overblow it. Of like, it's not like you are saying, okay, here's a sealed case of multiple chambers, each one containing so many thousands of dollars. If you go on an adventure wasting all this money, you get the final chamber of all, a fortune, a la Brewster's Millions. That which isn't. I totally whatever. I stole the idea. I guess if I wrote Brewster's Millions, I would have made it more contraption-y. Anyway, so. I haven't seen that in a long time. It's probably one of the most. It's probably yet another super problematic '80s movie. Anyway, couple of side tangents deep there, but there is generosity, there is skill, and the kindness, and somehow that does have such potential to create a lot of positive messages for wherever someone would want to take it. That's really interesting, and the idea that the creative people are near you, and it is a bit of a door in a way, of like, this is here. You are lucky you found this. God, that's interesting. It's a call to adventure in some ways.
Yeah. I feel like it has that element to it, and it has an element where it's, for me at least, it isn't important if I'm discovered. It is not important to me that the person who finds it ever finds me. I leave a breadcrumb there for them if they really want to follow it, but that's not the point. The point is that I'm just sending out a signal to remind people there are creative people all around you. There are creative people who are happy to share their work with the world and leave you a gift of some sort. And again, it's like David Zinn's thing, like that ephemeral. He and I talked about this years ago, and maybe now that I'm moving to Columbus, I can explore this idea a little bit more fully, is actually getting together a club of artists who just like descend on different locations and do this. So we get together just to sketch, right? Let's just get together to sketch. But when we leave, we all hide something someplace, right? So it's like a murder of crows come in, and then when they leave, instead of leaving a bunch of poop on the ground, it's like a whole bunch of art is like in all the nooks and crannies.
So I'm just going to say two more things on that. Please wear cloaks and be art crows. Please also be the crow from Galaxy of Super Adventure, Tax Crow.
Oh, you're talking about Tax Crow? Yeah.
Anyway, that's got some. Just please don't throw that idea out right away. Just sit with it.
Cloaks. But yeah. There's some practical elements to this as well, I think, that are like more self-serving. Like, for one, I think it's a good thought experiment to draw without thinking about an audience. We talked about this in a couple episodes back, in the episode we talked about sketching to relax, where we're just doing like art meditation. And there's something, the moment we embark on becoming visual storytellers, a storyteller has to have an audience. There's another part of that transaction, right? I'm telling a story to whom, right? Naturally, that's the next question. So it becomes such an ingrained and assumed part of the making of a thing. Who is it for? Who are you going to share it with? That if it's oddly liberating to not think about who it's for at all. Now, I know there's some artists out there who say, like, I didn't make this for this person, that person, or for money or for sex. I made it for art, right? Yep. And I'm paraphrasing Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics when I say that. Yep, sure. I have had a very, very difficult time disengaging from who, like, I'm a very service-oriented, advocacy type of person. I make things for people. And who I'm making it for does a lot to shape what I make. So this, to me, feels incredibly liberating to just make something. And yes, I'm making it for a person. I'm hoping that a young person or somebody who's young at heart finds it. But other than that, I don't even know. And I've let go of it. So now it's just about me and the thing. And then just leave it in the world and hope that somebody enjoys it. So that's part of it. There's other aspects too. When I go back to my early days as conventioning, I remember people would come to me with their sketchbooks and ask me to draw on their themed sketchbooks. Oh, I got a Nightcrawler sketchbook. Will you draw a Nightcrawler? And I'd be like, The idea of sitting here and drawing in front of people in this big noisy environment was very challenging to me, because historically drawing was an activity that happened alone, at home, in my studio, bedroom, wherever. But it was a place where there wasn't a whole lot of other kind of activity happening. Maybe a radio playing, right? So this is a chance, like when I do the bowling art drops, it's a chance for me to practice drawing in public, drawing in a way where I don't get to engage fully with the drawing because there's the social activity happening around me. And you're up, Jerzy, it's time for you to bowl. I gotta put my pens down, go bowl. By the way, side note, I always bowl better games when I'm drawing. I've noticed, like, 4 years of doing this, the game I play while I'm doing the art drop and working on it, I bowl significantly better than the game I play after I've hidden the art drop. So anyway,
Isn't that why?
I don't know. It's weird, right? I think one of my teammates hypothesized that it's because I'm not thinking too hard about what I'm doing when I'm bowling, because I just want to get back to my drawing. Because like I throw the ball and then I don't even look at it going on the lane. I just like run back to my drawing. It's like I'll get like a strike and I don't even know it. I'll sit down and I start drawing and everybody will cheer. I'm like, oh, well, that's great. Which is a fun way to engage with sports, right? But yeah, so it gives me an opportunity to practice that. And like I said before, it's like drawing for its own sake. That is a fun thing to do. And I think that would make my justification for like, how do you find the time? Well, what if I told you it doesn't have to amount to anything, right? What if I told you that this is the way that you play 15 minutes of Mario Kart? What if I told you this is the way you read a news story while you're on the bus? Like you're engaging with it in that kind of way. Right?
You've hooked me on a bunch of ways. I mean, it's like one of the notes I wrote here was, I love getting different experience and practice and angles and perspectives on your current skills. And just the idea that, oh gosh, this influential factor of naming yourself as a storyteller is quite a force. That it's great. It's really helpful and useful and has much benefit to practice when you think of, well, yes, I'm writing a story for whom, and in what context will they be consuming this and all that. It's like, oh my gosh, allow me to collect design constraints. I'm influenced by design constraints, and now I'm going to put my creativity through that and see what comes out, but evaluate it against these constraints and shape it. And that's a lot of work. It is a helpful discipline, but to say, hey, guess what? What if you don't do that for sometimes on purpose? That is fantastic, to just practice not doing it. The advocacy.
I know.
Different practice. You're getting me, Jerzy. You're getting me.
Like the people who went to art school are looking at us going like, yeah. Where have you guys been?
Yeah. Well, have a different experience. I always find the design constraints freeing, except their ever presence. That part is saying, well, God, having a new experience will, it helps build fresh perspective, and that fresh perspective is a capability, and you can use that when you come back to the storytelling.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then let's get to that practical aspect of doing the art drops. Is it's an opportunity for you to play with ideas in a truly playful way. So again, let's go back to that one, the art drop I did at the bowling alley last week, 2 weeks ago. I forget when did I do this one? February 4th, I guess it was a couple weeks ago. I was talking with a friend of mine about this Baron von Bear story that I really want to do. Walking through the premise with her, and she said, just offhandedly, you should have him go back into Ben-Hur times and have a chariot race. I'm like, why? He's like, I don't know, it'd just be really cool. So I'm like, okay, well, there's my art drop. I'm going to draw Baron von Bear in a chariot race. Do I have any agenda or thought as to how this would possibly work into what I was thinking of doing with the story? No. I have no clue. But an invitation to be playful with drawing, right? And while I'm drawing, I'm meditating on the idea itself, and then I'm thinking about, okay, if he's in a chariot race, he's going to be competing. Who's he going to be competing against? Maybe some kind of crazy lizard guy. All right, what's the lizard guy like? Well, is he going to be a cheater like Masala in Ben-Hur? Well, maybe not. Maybe he'll just be a jerk. Maybe he'll be a taunting kind of character. Oh, maybe he'll have, here's an idea. Maybe like one of the, he has a cursed object that allows him to never lose a race, right? And what would that do? And so Baron von Baron not only has to win the race against an unbeatable opponent to get the cursed object so he can decurse it, but he's also got to like beat the guy fair and square in order to break the curse. I don't know, but like these kind of thoughts start happening while you're just engaged with the drawing. So once again, you're brainstorming in a playful, in a way that where you don't have the pressure of like delivering on anything for anybody, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so funny because you're describing in a way, so trying to wrap my head around this, Jerzy. So you just said, hey, you're free. Go run, go play. And then you described not being free, but feeling free.
Yep.
And so, that sounds hard again. but intriguing.
Well, see, it totally depends on the context of the moment, right? So this was a situation where somebody gave me a prompt and I went, what? And I went, well, because I went, what? I have to do it now, right? I don't have a choice because like that recoil suggested an invitation for discovery. But we can't help but start to knit ideas together. It's like when we were talking about the art meditation episode. Mm-hmm. It's like just the act of drawing, we're compelled to start to make shapes out of it. And so it takes that little nudge to push you back. And going back to the practice thing and scooting more towards freedom again, there was a series that I did a couple years ago of just, I challenged myself to say, like, we're just drawing Boulder and Fleet being friends. You don't get to draw them doing awesome action stuff. You're not going to have any debris, no explosions, no intense action poses. It's just going to be the two of them being buddies together. And I remember drawing them like shoveling snow, reading books, eating sandwiches, right? It was like all of these little moments to just try to capture the quiet joy of companionship, right? So I had a design constraint, but again, it wasn't a design constraint to deliver to any audience. It was more like, this is going to be my workout. But it's going to be a workout that's done in a playful way. This isn't me lifting weights really hard. This is me like jumping rope while cool music plays, right?
Okay. I think I'm getting it. And it's not fully formed in my head, but there's somewhere between, so let's say there's a continuum. Farther on one side is the fully meditative drawing. Mm-hmm. And working to be purposefully abstract and enjoy that. But then on the other side is the constrained service-driven storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. But then storytelling can go nudging further toward the other side of the spectrum or the continuum. So you're pushing that storytelling towards somewhere further away from the service-driven storytelling. And interesting. All right. I'm tempted again.
And, okay, let me layer on one last, like, practical benefit, and then we can try to dig for final thought. So I posted a cat and cat one a week or two ago. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it without, like, totally stopping the show. But it was Captain Cat and ship's cook Maggie on, like, a rowboat. And Captain Cat is pointing into the distance angrily, and we can see this hazy serpent dragon thing like winding its way through the sky toward them. And all that drawing was about was, I want to draw Lau and Maggie because I like thinking about them, I like drawing them, and I don't know what they're going to be doing, but maybe odds are Maggie will be doing something cheerfully and Lau will be yelling at her because that's the dynamic of those two characters. But then when I sat down to do it, I said, well, you know what? This is a chance to practice more of your watercoloring in a way where there's no risk because you don't know who's going to find this piece. You don't have an audience to serve on this one. Again, we're making art without an audience, right? You're practicing in a public way where there is an audience, but you aren't thinking about them. So like the way you're supposed to work in your sketchbook, but we often don't anymore, right? And so I use it as an opportunity to try to do like making something look very distant in that drawing. And I wasn't sure if I was going to pull it off, right? But because I didn't know who was going to enjoy this and who it was for, I felt more free to make that mistake. That I was still going to have something I delivered, but because I don't know who it's for, I can screw this one up, right?
That is a great thing to try to practice in itself, and to feel playful with the constraints that you've chosen to have, because they were creatively interesting, not necessarily because they were a requirement for a project. Even if it was all of your own devising, you're your own client, but it's service driven with the intention for like, I don't know, having a healthy business. That maybe I'm adding too much on that far side of the continuum, but it has those kind of like great constraints, but like there's something different about that versus what you're describing, and that's like more toward the middle. It's not the fully mindful abstract. Don't let things take form, and just have experience a certain particular raw joy of covering like square, like just mileage of line and page and stuff, right? And being in that moment, but there that middle thing where it's like, nope, there's pieces and there's play and there's a game going on. There's a dynamic, there's choices and limitation, but it serves play more than it serves the audience.
Right. Or at least
trying to wrap my head around it.
At least how it serves the audience is not explicit or even considered. There's a trust that it will somehow serve an audience, but you're removing that concern, right? You are not acknowledging that concern by virtue of the parameters of the activity, right?
That's really good. I think that's what do you think? I think we explored that. I wonder.
I think we did. Do you want to have a final thought?
Do we have a final thought? Let's take a look in the chat after we take a break, and I'll do some thinking also.
Okay.
All
right. So in about a minute, 2 minutes, we will wrap up this episode with a final takeaway from our discussion. But before we do that, we have to thank some other people who make the show possible, and those people happen to be us. We make stuff. We think hard about the stuff that we make, and then we bring those thoughts to the show, so you will think hard about this stuff too. And the thing that I participate in making that I hope you will check out today is the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, which is coming up this June. It'll be here before you know it. And if you are a cartoonist who had a book or even a webcomic that came out in 2018, I hope you will tell your constituency, well, I should say this, if you're a cartoonist who made a webcomic that is primarily for young people that came out in 2018, I hope you will point your constituency to a2caf.com/KC Awards, because there's an open ballot right now for the Kids Comics Awards, where kids can nominate their favorite comics from last year. And those nominations will inform the final judging of who gets to be on the final ballot, which will be voted upon in May and June. So, and the winners win this cute little Lego trophy, or a custom Lego trophy, and then they will be announced at a special ceremony where there's puppets and lasers and music and all sorts of wackiness at A2CAF, which, by the way, is a free event. When is it again? June 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2019 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Totally free to attend, and 50 plus artists come out and lead free hands-on workshops for kids and adults all weekend long. It's a very good time, but mostly I hope you will point people at the Kids Comics Awards nomination form. Even if you just have young people in your life, you can ask them, like, what were your favorite books last year that came out last year? Ask them to vote, nominate, I should say. Rob, what do you want to talk about? What did you make recently, or want to share that you've made in the recent times?
Well, I like to talk about a variety of projects. Let's do Guitar Fretter this time. Why not?
Oh, okay. Let me pull it up.
Okay, so one of the games I make is Guitar Fretter. It's really a one of those things where it's not a violent game. It's simple, playful way to learn the note positions on a guitar fretboard, and it has characters from my webcomic, and they're they just make it cute, fun, low stakes way to be like, well, what are the notes on this string? Well, you know what? You're going to want to explore and figure it out as the game gives you feedback, and as these little cute demon creatures come down, and they're going to take away your health, and you want to stay around. You want to get a high score, right? So there's ways to like the more you chain correct notes, the more encouraging the game gets. There's all sorts of little ways that are reinforcing and helping you remember the note positions on a guitar fretboard while defeating demons, and that's you can learn more about it by going to guitarfretter.com, and it's in all sorts of places. It's on a lot of app stores like iOS and Android and itch.io, and so you can play it on your phones, tablets, desktops, and learn more about it at guitarfretter.com.
And if you have purchased it, giving it a review wherever you purchased it helps more people find the game. And we appreciate everybody who does that. But let's say that you're here because you like the way we think about stuff and you don't care so much about the stuff we make. That's fair enough. This show is a thing we make. And we have more things like it at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download self-contained videos at a price of your choosing, even free. And you can go check it out at leanintoart.com/workshops. If you're watching this show on YouTube, you can give it a thumbs up. That helps more people find the show. And if you're listening to it in a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, so on, giving it a 5-star review wherever you listen helps more people find the show. And we thank everybody who has been doing that. It means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. It does. Thank you. So, thoughts on Final Thought? I think I think we've had some fun chat, and I noticed this idea, coupled by Robert Clements Jr. mentioning about the idea that this might be one of those helpful ways to trick yourself without knowing it, like somehow making the stakes lower because you're not getting all tensed from like a feeling of anxious commitment. But then there's and is the trick like so, and which is one aspect of this. We've talked about lots of different aspects of this whole thing, the art drops, and but just honing in particularly on the because I think this applies to art drops, and I think this also applies to even sketch commissions at it when you're tabling, or you're in any kind of situation where it's playful, low stakes, theoretically. You're meant to feel very free, and I also wrote something else down, and I'm curious about your reaction to this.
Okay.
So what I wrote down is the idea that another continuum. On one end, I am having fun, and on the other end, others are having fun, and then in the middle, is I'm having fun? Maybe is it a continuum, or is this a shape where there's forces in between? Anyway, so the dot in the middle is it's like, am I having fun with? Am I having fun against? Or am I neutral? Right? Or is this neutral as far as others? Is there a tension there, right? Where that whole service mindedness, tricking yourself about it's about you, is it about your audience? I don't know. Where do you find that fun?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of places to find that fun, and I think this also goes back to our episode we did recently about motivations with Chris Watkins's prompt about well, wait a minute, if we're not supposed to measure our value based on exterior factors, then why share the work at all? And I think you and I said well, I think it's okay to want people to like your stuff. I think it's okay to want to be liked. There's a lot of good reasons that we want that, but it should be part of a constellation of motivations, right? So when you talk about like, well, am I doing this for me or am I doing it for them? Well, yes and yes. And how much of it you're doing it for you or doing it for somebody else kind of changes your relationship with the thing that you're doing, right? So like when I'm doing a project for a deadline, that rather for like professional work that has a deadline and a client and somebody whose expectations I have to meet, my relationship with that work is very different. There is like a high degree of anxiety around that work. I've said before, I think publicly, that I didn't envy Anne when we were working on rockets together, because I get very, very wound tight about, and I think about the work all the time, and I am playful in a very intense way, right? Where it's like, let's be playful with this thing, but let's also ship it on time, and that's something where it's very service driven. I want to be of service to this group of people, and I'm going to let that shape a lot of how I interact with it. But then going in the other direction, as it becomes more about me and my own personal expression, and I'm thinking about somebody joyfully engaging with this thing, but it's up to them and not up to me. I have no control over this, where this thing lands. That becomes more relaxed and joyful, and it reconnects me with why I fell in love with this activity in the first place.
We've had similar thoughts surrounding mini comics.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
And that was something that occurred to me while we were talking about this. Is like, it's very related to like why I advocate making mini comics so much. Is it going back to what Robert Clemens Jr. said in the chat about like the best practice is tricking yourself to improve without knowing it. That's one of the reasons I like mini comics, is that they do that. The trick is that it's something that's easy to ship, and then you get that little endorphin burst of like, I shipped a thing. I have a finished thing in my hand. I have evidence. I have an artifact of my experience that I can pass around to other people to say, this is what I'm all about, right? This art drop thing, I think, trips similar wires, but in a different way, right? Where you're leveling up, you're experimenting, you're playing, but then you get that little hit, that little buzz, because like, I finished the thing and I took a picture of it and I posted it on Instagram and I hit it in a place and hopefully somebody finds it and enjoys it, right? So that you're still shipping a thing. It's not just an entry in a sketchbook, right? Although that is also a cool thing, because a sketchbook becomes this gigantic artifact, this journal of your development and growth and exploration as an artist. So that's a different thing altogether. But a sketchbook is not meant necessarily to be shared with other people in that way.
It also reminds me of when I did the unblocking project, where that was an entire year of low stakes work. Just make a thing, share it publicly, and do it every single day. And that was 2015, so it's been 4 years now. But that was there's different angles on this, like, low stakes playfulness with the skills you've built.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why can't you have fun with these things too?
Yeah. And incidentally, the more you do it, the more you're going to level up, because you're practicing. The fluency becomes more apparent to you, and you wind up finding yourself being more versatile to work in a variety of environmons. And it reconnects you with the joy of the activity itself, rather than, here's context. Where am I going to find the time to do this thing? Versus, hey, look, I happen to be riding my bike home from work, and I can stop at this place real quick and do a quick little drawing. That'll be fun. It'll relax me before I go head home and start working on dinner and whatever, right?
Yeah. So it's at least 3 times you have completed the sale. So nice work.
Well, I want to close by saying I would never presume to tell anybody else how to live. All I've tried to do is just share why I'm excited about a thing. And if it winds up making somebody else want to do it too, cool. If not, well, I'm doing my thing and I'm enjoying it. So.
And thank you for sharing it. This was a fun exploration.
Cool. So does that mean we did a podcast?
I think we did a podcast.
Thank
That's my
goodness.
way of saying it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody who hung out with us today in the chat room and interacted with us. We record the show every week at Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central, and we stream it live on YouTube and then collect it as a podcast at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. We will be back next week, I think. Yes, with another episode. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
Yeah, thank you, Jerzy, for doing this. And I have been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'm going to shut the stream down. Thanks everybody for hanging out.
Thank you. Good night.